Hi, I'm Brian Kearns, and this is my presentation on When Ethics and Policies Collide, a case study about Rocket Junior High School. These are the standards that were selected. The major components of the standards are that the completers understand and demonstrate the capacity to evaluate, communicate about, and advocate for ethical and legal decisions, and also demonstrate the capacity to model ethical behavior in their personal conduct and relationships, and to cultivate ethical behavior in others. Okay, quick summary of this case. James is a student with many disciplinary problems. He is not the main factor in this case, though, but he is one of the reasons why this occurred. The big thing, though, with James is that with a lot of work from Principal Inman, he has been making a lot of headway in his behavior. Another student involved in this incident is David. He was an honor student and a trombonist in the school band who's never faced disciplinary action before. Both these students come from the South Side. After James had been called out of the office because of a number of tardies for that week, a teacher saw James interacting with David in the hallway and thought that they saw them exchange something. And so they were both called down to the office, and Principal Inman invited the SRO into the meeting because he thought that it could involve drug, but she was surprised about it, especially with David. As soon as they got in and the SRO and the principal started asking questions, James denied everything, and then when David was questioned, he got really nervous and started to cry, and when he was searched, the SRO found brass knuckles on him. After this happened, James jumped up right away and admitted guilt, that they were actually his brass knuckles and that he had intimidated James into holding on to them for him. However, because both boys were in possession of the brass knuckles, they were both taken to the juvenile detention facility for felony possession of a weapon on school property. Both parents were notified. James's mother had been in the situation before and thought he just needed to learn a lesson, and so she was okay with the punishment that was going to be applied to him. David's parents, though, especially mainly his mom, were very upset about what had occurred and thought the policy about expulsion was not correct, and that he was being taken to the juvenile detention facility wasn't correct because they weren't his brass knuckles. As a result of this, the Principal Inman did not report David for expulsion, and because of this, he received a phone call from the Director of Secondary Education and was told that if he did not report David for expulsion, that he would receive an official reprimand. Some of the major legal and ethical issues involved in this: Principal Inman is required to report felony possessions to the district and recommend students for 45-day expulsion to the District Alternative Education Program, the DAEP. Principal Inman tore up David's report, and so as far as a legal and ethical issue, that's a big thing. Another thing is that David was the victim in this situation. The brass knuckles didn't belong to him; they belonged to James, and James had intimidated David into holding on to him for him so he wouldn't get in trouble at first. And just as far as an ethical thing, I found that was a great headway for James, was that James really did do the right thing by admitting guilt and not letting David take the fall for the brass knuckles. He could have easily have denied that they were his and avoided going to juvenile detention and expulsion again, but he did the right thing by standing up for David. So the big question involved in this case study is it ethical for Principal Inman to not report David, who was the victim, even though district policy states that he must be recommended for expulsion for felony possession of a weapon? Just some of the major facts: the people that were involved are Principal Inman, James, David, the SRO, and the Director of Secondary Education. The places were Rocket Junior High School, the South Side, and the Juvenile Detention Facility. And the programs, there are two different programs involved: the DAEP, and then also felony possession of a weapon is one of the policies that was brought up in the article. Okay, so major things that we need to know about. Future ramifications. What are some possible consequences for the actions that are being taken? If people were to find out, especially the community were to find out about the incident at the school and that James was recommended for expulsion and not David, people could be upset about that both students should be, if the policy is widely known in the community. David has a major stake in this outcome, He has never had discipline before. He's an honor student. He is in the school band. He's a young kid. And also the principal, because if he doesn't report this incident, he will have an official reprimand on his record. The parents have been consulted, as well as the director of secondary education. Other people that I would recommend talking to would be the district superintendent and also the school board. Are there any resources to change the system? That's one of the big questions here, because what's happening to David is not fair, it's not right. Are there any policies that are in place to protect students with no prior discipline issues? Most districts have a policy in place that first-time offenses do not result in expulsion. I know our district has that policy. And obviously, I mean, the more information there would be better. But from what was given in the case study, there is no other information that was given. But I do believe that through the case study, there is enough to make a decision for this case. So I identified 3 different options when it comes to this through the case study. The first thing is to do nothing. Doing nothing, I mean, there are some consequences to this. Doing nothing would entail not filing a report on David and risk the reprimand on my record. David's case, I believe, would hold up in court, and that he would be released, and that he wouldn't have anything on his personal record. And then, if that's the case, maybe after that, then maybe the reprimand would be rescinded. I mean, really, that's just leaving a lot up to chance, though. The second option that I came up with was filing the report. I mean, the director of secondary education said to, and according to district policy, and it's legally, it is the thing I should do. A reprimand is a big deal for me, and I do need to look out for myself in my career. And I could say that David should have stuck up for himself and told James that he would not hold on to those brass knuckles for him. And then the third option I came up with is going to the school board. What happened to David was not fair, and so the policy needs to be changed. It's broken. It doesn't protect the victims in this case, and so something needs to change. And not just for David. I mean, obviously, in the current situation, we need to do something for David, but this is something that could happen again to somebody else, and we need to find a way to get this fixed for David and for other people. So just looking at these options and what could possibly happen in so the first one with doing nothing, David's education career would be saved. He would not be put into the DAEP, and I would take the biggest blame if the district filed the report, because it's possible that they could just file it for me instead, and I would just have the reprimand on my record. If I did file the report, I would save face with the district, and I'd be taking care of my career. But because of that, David would be sent to the DAEP, and as it's stated in the case, like being put in the DAEP, it's a one-way street. You go from being a good student to a student who is one of the issues in the school. But also going to the school board for the third option, David's career would be saved. I mean, he wouldn't be put in the DAEP, he would remain in school and could keep doing the things he should be doing. And if policy could be changed, it wouldn't only be fixed for David, but it'd be fixed for any other student as well who was caught in this circumstance. It may not help David immediately, because if the district says that he has to be expelled, then he has to be, and then, however, that could be rescinded pretty quickly if we can get the policy changed really fast. But this would also show his parents and him that I am working for them and for their best interests. That, whatever the consequences for me are, it doesn't matter quite as much, but it's all about the students and helping them do get what they rightfully deserve. So the best option, I feel, really is option number 3, going to the school board. This policy is broken. It needs to be fixed. David is a victim in this case. They were not his. He was intimidated into holding them. And how is that right if we're punishing people who are weaker? Really, the school board is the one who is able to change policy and to fix what is wrong, and so that's the correct route to go. This also men's fences. A couple of the questions though that came up when I was thinking about this option were, how quickly will it change the policy and bring David back? Like, can we get this done quickly so he can get back into class and be protected from that program? And then how can we reach out to James? I mean, what he did was wrong, but he has shown that he wants to get better, and he's made some major progress. The fact that he admitted guilt is showing that he's really becoming more of a leader. So how can we show some mercy towards him while still allowing for justice with that? Now, as far as like putting myself in this situation, what would I do? I mean, this on this slide right here, I'm just, you know, a conversation I've had right away on the phone with this director of secondary education. I'm just imagining that he had just called me and told me that I had to file a report or I'd receive that reprimand. And so what I would say to him is like, I'm sorry, but I can't file that report and recommend David for expulsion. He was the victim, and I will be talking with the Board of Education to get this policy amended. I know that this isn't your fault and you're just following what policy states, but we need to get this policy fixed because David is the victim. What you're asking me to do for this boy, for David, is not right, and it's not right for James, who admitted guilt to the officer as well. James did the right thing. He needs to see that the system is going to stick up for people who make the right decision. And I know what the consequences are for my action, and I'm willing to accept them, but we need to get this fixed. So really what this boils down to in this initial conversation is the fact that what's happened to David is not fair, it's not right, and it needs to change dramatically. The school policy needs to be amended. The school board, they're the ones that help to create and fix district policy, and so that's the place I need to go first. And no matter what the consequences are for me, what would happen to David with this would be a whole lot worse if I recommended him for expulsion and going to the DAE program. Other stakeholders I need to bring into this would be the superintendent, because they are also an advocate with the school board and for students, and so they need to be aware of what the situation is, and they can also help with the situation and help with it. A big thing to remember is that I'm not mad at the director of secondary education. I'm not mad at the school board. This isn't either of their faults. They're just following what the policy says. But this policy has been an oversight, and really, I don't know if it could have been foreseen unless it happened before and they just chose to ignore it. But it's a possibility. But it needs to change, and you know, it's nobody's fault that it's there in place, but it needs to get fixed now. But what if the school board still recommended David for expulsion and refused to change that policy? What would be my next steps? Whatever's happening to David is not right still, no matter what. And so the next step would actually be to go to the State Department of Education and find out what state policy is and talk with them about getting that changed. If it's still not resolved after that, seeking advice from an education law attorney to get this fixed, and really looking into federal policy as well. If there are federal policies that would help save David from going into the DAEP, that's the route we need to go. And like I said, regardless of what the consequences are for me in this case, this needs to get taken care of for David and for any other student that this would occur to. Because it's just not right that a younger student being intimidated by an older, bigger one would take the fall even after the other student admitted guilt. So that's what I kind of feel with this case study. When I was reading it, I really did feel I felt a lot of pride for James because of him doing the right thing. I felt really sorry for David because he was caught in a situation that he's just too young to understand and stand up for himself. And you know, can we really expect a 13-year-old like that? It's, you know, an honor student, a band student. I don't want to be stereotypical, but someone like that to stand up to someone like James. I mean, I felt a lot of pride for James and a lot of sorrow for David, and just a sincere desire to really help both of them. So, but thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this course.